Alrighty. Okay. Welcome everyone. So for today's meeting, there are a bunch of things that we may need to talk over. But first, I think that there were some things that landed in Drupal core this week. Am I wrong, Wim?
No, there's a whole bunch of things that landed in the last week or so.
Did you want to give a summary?
Sure.
And highlight the ones that are more, relevant.
So well, I think there's two important things that happened. The first one is this one. I'll paste the link in chat, and hopefully those who are watching can also see it. It's issue 2765959. It's a 200+ comment issue. It makes REST responses cacheable in dynamic page cache. So sorry, REST 4xx responses. So for example, some APIs are set up to allow anonymous users to access APIs, but perhaps say some entity, perhaps node 5 or term 6 is not yet published and therefore is not accessible for anonymous users. Today, in Drupal 8.4, that would result in recomputing access checking every single time. But we could actually do a lot of work to avoid that. Also things like field access. If field access prevents you from seeing a particular entity and needs data to be omitted, or it results in a 403, that means there's quite a bit of work you need to do on every request. Well, as of today, or as of a few days ago, that 4xx response, so 403, 404, whatever it is cacheable. And it's building on top of some other infrastructure that landed a few weeks ago that JSON API will also be able to use. And so it makes it so that in certain scenarios, your REST API will be able to scale much better because we're not recomputing the same stuff over and over again. So that is one of the issues that landed. It also improved overall test coverage for core REST and uncovered a few problems that are fixed and, again, makes life for JSON API easier. Also GraphQL, of course. And the other one that landed is about providing REST test coverage, so integration test coverage for the file entity type. File entity type was the only entity type that didn't yet have integration test coverage for REST. Now it does, and there are still definitely problems with how file entities are handled, but just the basics are at least tested now. And we know for every single thing that does work with file entities, reading always works in all formats, but creating and updating doesn't quite work. In some cases, some edge cases do work, others do not. I'm not going to go into details, but in any case, we will now be aware if we regress, so we can be sure to not break existing sites anymore. And that is exactly what we needed to move on to the next steps to improve and fix the normalization of file entities, so to provide you with all the information that you actually need. For example, if you access it in JSON or XML format or JSON API, you don't get the file URL, so the absolute URL. JSON API contains a workaround, but the issue that we fixed that in core is now finally unblocked. So we're getting to the point where JSON API would no longer need to do that workaround. And then it also unblocks, and that is the super important thing, it also finally unblocks the uploading of files. So uploading of a file, regardless of size, so whether it's 2 megabytes or 500 megabytes, because it is implemented in a way that does not require base64 encoding and whatnot. That issue has been ready for a long time, but it needs these other things to land first, because otherwise we could be breaking existing file REST support and JSON API support. So a bunch of those long-time blockers have finally gone in. And so that allowed us to move forward with many other issues. So dynamic page cache, cacheability testing, and JSON API can do the same. And 100% coverage now for testing all entity types via REST. So now we know that everything is working and which bits aren't working, and we will know when we accidentally break things.
That's quite an update.
Yeah.
So great. So I think that in the JSON API issue queue, we will need at least, I think, of two follow-ups for now and one in the future. One for using whatever this new method is in the 4xx responses to be more performant in that scenario, right?
Yep.
And another one to deprecate the URL workaround and make it in a BC way.
Yes,
when
and
that
so
processing
we have a similar problem with the way that the HAL normalization works in Drupal core. It does think like it is implemented in such a terrible way that it's impossible to fix it and not break BC. So the fix requires us to break BC, which is not great, of course. So it is an opt-in only thing. Existing sites will continue to use the existing normalization, so clients will not break. I think we need to do the same for JSON API, where existing sites using JSON API continue to use the existing normalization, but then new sites will gain the automatic support provided by Drupal core. And that way, nothing would break.
Right. Yeah. Even if they upgrade to the 8.5.
Yes, even when they update, especially then.
Right. Yeah, obviously. If not, there is no possible way to get BC break. That's that's right. Yeah, awesome. Do you think you can create those issues? You have more contacts than anyone, probably.
Definitely, yeah. That was my next step, because the other thing I've been working on is something that is super important for JSON API and core REST to converge to some extent, which is the whole thing about field type level normalizers and data type level normalizers. That's what I've been working on the past week, besides lots of rerolls. And so I now have an issue. I will paste the link. Where we're updating the timestamp item. That's a timestamp field that is used for the changed and created and revision timestamps in Nodes, for example. Those use Unix timestamps, and we added a normalizer for that. The problem is that that is implemented at the field level. It should be implemented at the data type level, which is why JSON API doesn't pick it up. And so this issue is moving that from the field level to the data type level, which means it will also be fixed for JSON API. And so that is a patch that is actually working. The next step is to create test coverage there to ensure that we basically strongly discourage new field type level normalizers and to encourage data type level normalizers, because then they continue to work for both core REST and JSON API. And that was like one of the super important things for JSON API to get into core.
Right, I totally agree. Also, I think that this should not be specific of, like, this should not be only important so JSON API reuses it. Like, every module providing a custom format should take this stance, or at least that's my opinion.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. That one. Yeah. That one. In particular, is going to break JSON API extras, but in a way that makes me happy. Like,
happy breaks, I guess. Okay.
Yeah, I know. No, JSON API extras contains a workaround to do that, and yeah, the only thing that I worry a little bit is the impact that changing the data type in a normalizer will have in the generation of schemas. Because if I generate,
we're not changing the data type. I think you mean you're changing the normalization.
Yeah. No, sorry. I didn't mean data type, but it's a very confusing term in this context. So going from an integer units timestamp, and in the data type type data description definition to ISO 8610 or whatever the ISO is, which is a string inside of a normalizer, will play havoc with our schemas, which is probably a problem to solve in a whole new way. But yeah, there's that, because
I think it's the same again though. We had the same problem with timestamp fields in Drupal core, and existing sites continue to receive just a number, timestamp, and sites that opt in that are existing get the string formats, and new sites always get the string format. So that's how we've dealt with it there, and I think the same approach can work for JSON API or JSON API extras.
No, sorry. What I mean is, I think we're talking about slightly different things. So when we generate the JSON schema out of the entity for automatic documentation, for hopefully driving the data model in the consumer, etc.
Right.
We are saying, oh, this data type is timestamp. It inherits from integer, and therefore, when I generate the schema for documenting this created property, I'm going to say it's an integer. However, the output through the normalization system is not going to be an integer. It's going to be a string that's going to say Wednesday, blah blah blah, instead of a number. Yes. And I think that will be a problem.
Right. Yeah. That is like, that's an unsolved problem. Sadly, the Symfony serialization component doesn't provide good answers to this. The same problem you will have though. So I understand this is a change, but for example, for the date time field and the date time range field, both of those use datetime ISO 8601 data types, which means that you already need some way to figure out, okay, this is the ID or label of the data type, and this is what it's going to look like in the schema. Like, you already need some custom code, right, to determine what it's going to look like, because there's no way to have that work automatically in the Symfony system. So that is already a problem. But yes, you're right, that it is tricky, but that's an unsolved problem as of yet.
Yeah.
We kind of have to maintain a mapping ourselves for generating JSON schema OpenAPI documentation.
Somehow there has to be a link in between the data definition and the series of transformations that it goes through, and otherwise we cannot derive this information.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a prototype, an attempt of doing this in JSON API extras. Because as I said, we did a workaround for these kind of transformations, especially for dates, to go from an integer to an ISO 8601. And the normalizers, they are called field enhancers. They not only transform back and forth, but also know what the new schema is.
They provide the metadata that you want.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what you did was add another layer on top of the Symfony serialization component that makes it not incomplete.
It's still the mapping that you were saying. It's exactly the same.
But so maybe what we need to do is try to get the additions that you made in JSON API's field enhancers to move those upstream into the Symfony serialization component so that everything can benefit.
Yeah,
that would be the only way to semi-enforce it, because otherwise only JSON API will be able to do this and not Drupal core, for example, or any other implementation.
Yeah, well, it is a service, so it would be weird though, like require JSON API extras and not use it in JSON API. So yeah, totally. I mean, that's a conversation that keeps coming up, and I think that we have other problems to worry about at the moment. But this will come up, and we are experimenting on it already. And when the time comes, I think we'll have a good solution for it. Cool. That's a lot of stuff and progress. So I wanted to say that we released 1.0 of Contenta, which means that now there is a nice way to, or a nice point in time where we know that things are working as expected, and you can start from there. It doesn't mean that we're going to support upgrade paths, because it's not going to happen. I mean, that's not how we think that distributions should work. It's just a nice point in time to say, we are, or the content community keeps rolling in new features and enhancements, and sometimes, things break, as in software. But if you revert to 1.0, things are supposed to be more stable, and that's where you fork and start your decouple project. So really happy that happened. That was the work of a lot of people, and I'm really, really amazed of how the whole content community rallied around creating. Like, it's so cool. Like, people created Docker containers and documentation sites and consumers and Drupal modules, and they did talks about it, and helped developing like all these difficult problems that we were discussing, like schemas. Many of the conversations started as part of this whole idea of creating distributions for API first. That, I think, happened like less than 1 year ago, Wim.
Yeah, so
Am I correct?
I think so. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think last American DrupalCon is when we were really talking about it. So
Yeah.
that was like May, April.
So yeah, all that happened. So yeah, super proud of the Drupal community, and the work that indirectly helped get there. Like all the things that happened in Drupal core that made things easier, and yeah. So that's one thing. Yeah. And also the next thing that I think that we should focus is that it seems that JSON API extras, again, it's a good problem to have. JSON API extras is getting more traction that I initially anticipated. And for the comments that I'm getting, and it's not in a state that I am close to be comfortable to make a stable release. And people want to customize their API, and I think that's fair. It's something that that I also want, and that I've done in the past. So I think that a big focus has to happen into getting tests in JSON API extras, because I think that's what it's most needed at the moment, and also to have a good way for people to contribute their field enhancers. Like we were talking about the date one, there is also to just dump a JSON object, or to just unwrap the body.value and just have it as top level instead of having to go through the 2 levels of it, things like that. So I would like to have to make it explicit that we are open to consider more field enhancers. So if you write one, contribute back so everyone can benefit from it. And then we can have like a common way of doing things, which I think it's a win for everyone. So there's that. And in terms of authentication, I think that we've done some cool research lately. Thanks to Jingsang and his teammates. Do you want to provide an insight of what you're doing? Oh no, the audio issue again.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. Hopefully you can fix it quickly like last time. Still not.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Great. So So we have a need. We have a microservices architecture. We have many components built on Drupal, and I mean we also have other things: Node.js, CouchDB, PouchDB, a bunch of those, and even Java, Android, iOS. So we want to have SSO for all the components. And so we did some research. The bakery obviously doesn't work because the bakery rely on the browser cookies. Then we also found the article Commerce Guy wrote. They were using OAuth plus OpenID Connect. I thought that was working. It would work, but we want to try. And then I saw the add standard JWT issue on JSON on OAuth issue queue, and I read that, and it was very interesting. And then I thought that was actually simpler than the OpenID. So the idea is that the using JWT as access token that can work for service-oriented components. Also, it can work for browser-based applications. So that was the research we did, and we want to pursue this direction. So now we are building a contributor module based on the simple auth. So we want to use simple auth to provide SSO for other Drupal sites as well as for other technologies. So last week there was the issue closed about add standard JWT claims to generate token. I actually have a confusion about it. So when the issue was written, it looks like that the JWT, I mean the whole token thing was generated by simple OAuth module. But when we did the investigation, it turns out that the whole token was responsible or generated by the league OAuth module, which is the upstream. But our need is how do we generate, how do we add private claims? So previously, you give me an answer to use to override what's that? I forgot the terminology.
The normalizer.
Yeah, normalizer. To have a custom normalizer. But now, since the token is generated by the upstream, so we were looking into the league OAuth documentation. There was actually one function to let us to add extra parameters. However, the league OAuth doesn't allow us. I mean, as so far as the research go, we didn't find any way that the league OAuth can let us, the consumer or application developers, to add private claims to the access token. So I think that's a roadblock for us. And if you have any guidance, that would be great.
So, okay. Let me provide a little bit more context. It's not what you asked, but I'm going to mute you because I hear a huge echo. Oh, no, that's fixed. So first, this was created because I thought that some of the optional claims were mandatory and they were not there. And in a hurry, I created that ticket. So that was that's the explanation of why it got closed, because then I realized, oh, but it is optional. So that's one thing. In order to add private claims, I was assuming that because that normalizer is used as part of one of the functions by the upstream library, the league library for auth, which in turn uses a JWT library. Be a composer, everything happens magically. Well, it's not magic, it's science. But anyways, the library that takes that generates JWT takes the data from the league auth, and then it actually gets the data from the Drupal normalizer. So I was assuming that adding your private claims there would go up to the chain, but I think that what you're saying is that seems to not be true, and we need to uncover a path to make things go up to the JWT library. Is that correct?
Yeah, possibly. Or we just haven't spent enough time to find the right file. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. No, I'm super interested in see what this direction is, and having SSO as a distributed SSO would be very, very good. Some sort of Drupal pinging will be required to create new tokens. But yeah, I think that is a good thing though, because truly distributed authentication system can be very tricky and has things and uncovers dark corners that I don't want to be in. So yeah, I think this is the direction to go, and I think it is very useful for the big community, especially in the, as you were saying, in this microservices era that we're living.
All right. Yeah, we're gonna continue spending more time on it. Hopefully, we can find a solution soon.
Cool. Are you developing this SSO prototype in the public, or not ready to share it yet?
Yeah, we actually gonna do a sandbox on Drupal.org first. Then once
awesome.
we're working, then we promote it to a full project.
Cool. Yeah. Awesome. I know that it's 5 minutes past the ending time, but if anyone else has anything to add or to contribute to the meeting. If not, I'm gonna go light a fire because I'm freezing in this room.
Thank you, guys.
I have a fireplace. It's not like I'm gonna light up my furniture or anything.
I hope not. Okay.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.